The Galactic Empire discovers Earth. The infinite expanse of the cosmos stretched out before the Imperial scout ship Intrepid as it glided through the void between stars. Its mission was one of exploration and cataloging, seeking out new worlds to bring under the Galactic Empire's vast dominion. Little did the crew suspect that this routine survey would lead them to a most unusual discovery, one that would set in motion events that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. Captain Zoran, "We're picking up some unusual readings from the third planet in this system," reported the ship's sensor operator, a lithe blue-skinned Argosian named Hala. The captain, an imposing figure clad in the crisp black uniform of the Imperial fleet, strode over to peer at the readouts. His brow furrowed as he studied the data scrolling across the screen. "What have we got, Hala?" "It's a Class M world, sir, but that's not what's unusual. The planet is emitting a tremendous amount of electromagnetic radiation across multiple spectrums. It's like nothing I've ever seen from a pre-spaceflight civilization." Zoran's interest was piqued. In his decades of service to the Empire, he had participated in the subjugation of dozens of primitive species. But something about this felt different. He had a sense, honed by years on the frontiers of Imperial expansion, that this discovery would be significant. "Bring us in for a closer look," he ordered. "I want detailed scans of the surface, focusing on the sources of those emissions." As the Intrepid moved into a low orbit, its powerful sensors probed the mysteries of the blue-green world below. The ship's AI systems worked to make sense of the flood of data, constructing a picture of the civilization that called this planet home. What emerged was a portrait of contradictions. The dominant species, a bipedal race of primates, had achieved a level of technological sophistication that seemed to outstrip their relatively brief time as a starfaring people. Vast cities sprawled across the continents, connected by webs of transportation and communication networks. The electromagnetic emissions Tala had detected poured forth from billions of devices, computers, communicators, entertainment systems. And yet, for all their advancement, these beings remained fractured and divided. Hundreds of nation-states vie for power and resources, locked in an endless dance of competition and conflict. They poured staggering sums into weapons of war even as millions of their kind languished in poverty and deprivation. It was a familiar story, one the Empire had seen play out on countless worlds. Zoran leaned back in his command chair, his mind racing with possibilities as he considered the implications of this discovery. The Intrepid scans had revealed tantalizing hints of untapped resources on this world. Rare minerals, biological treasures, the potential for new technologies to be reverse-engineered and fed into the Imperial war machine. But there was something else too, a nagging sense that there was more to this species than met the eye. Their disunity and fractious nature could make them easy prey for Imperial conquest, or it could be a facade, concealing hidden strengths and capabilities. Zoran had learned never to underestimate a potential foe, no matter how primitive they might appear. His mind made up, the captain straightened in his seat. "Helm, set a course back to Imperial space. We have a report to make to command." The bridge crew shared knowing glances as they carried out their orders. They had all seen that look in their commander's eyes before. It was the look of a predator who had caught the scent of its prey. And so the Intrepid slipped its orbital bonds and vanished into the darkness between stars, bearing word of the newly discovered world and its fractious, fascinating inhabitants. On the planet's surface, life went on as it always had, the teeming billions unaware that their skies had been filled with alien eyes. Humanity, in all its brilliance and contradiction, its nobility and savagery, had drawn the attention of the galaxy's most rapacious power. The countdown to first contact had begun, but it would be on the Empire's terms. The Galactic Empire had set its sights on Earth, and when the Imperial war machine came for them, humanity would face the greatest challenge in its short but tumultuous history. In the great dance of civilizations, the steps were about to change. Forever. Earth's secret preparations. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth, in a top-secret facility known only to a select few, a group of humanity's brightest minds gathered to discuss a threat that had long been anticipated but never openly acknowledged. They were the members of Project Hyperion, a clandestine organization tasked with preparing for the day when humanity would no longer be alone in the universe. At the head of the conference table sat Dr. Eleanor Vance, the project's brilliant and driven leader. She surveyed the faces of her colleagues, noting the mixture of excitement and trepidation in their expressions. They all knew what was at stake. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice calm and measured, "the day we have long feared has finally arrived. An alien scout ship has discovered Earth, and we must assume that a full-scale invasion is imminent." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Dr. Amir Singh, the project's chief engineer, leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "How much time do we have?" "We can't be certain," Dr. Vance replied. "But we must act as if the enemy is already on our doorstep." She tapped a command into the console before her, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the table. It showed a sprawling network of satellites, ground-based installations, and underwater facilities, all linked together by pulsing lines of energy. "This is the Hyperion Defense Network," she explained. "The result of years of secret research and development, funded by a consortium of world governments. It is a quantum-based system that will allow us to detect and engage any incoming threat, no matter how advanced." Dr. Lena Sorensen, the project's head of quantum research, spoke up. "The key is our use of entangled particles to create an unbreakable communication network. It cannot be jammed or hacked, and it will allow us to coordinate our defenses on a global scale." Dr. Vance nodded. "But that is only the beginning. The Hyperion network also includes a wide array of offensive capabilities, designed to give us a fighting chance against a technologically superior foe." She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a series of sleek, angular craft nestled in hidden hangars around the world. "These are the Valkyrie fighters, equipped with directed energy weapons and quantum-entangled stealth technology. They will be our first line of defense against the alien ships." The display shifted again, revealing a bristling array of ground-based installations. "And these are the Odin batteries, armed with quantum disruption missiles designed to punch through even the most advanced shielding." Dr. Singh shook his head in amazement. "I knew we had made significant progress, but this is beyond anything I had imagined." Dr. Vance allowed herself a small smile. "We have had to push the boundaries of science and engineering to make this possible, but even with all of our advancements, the odds against us are formidable. The enemy we face is vast, powerful, and utterly ruthless. They will not hesitate to crush us if given the chance." A somber silence fell over the room as the magnitude of the challenge sank in. They all knew that the survival of their species, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy itself, would hinge on the success of Project Hyperion. Dr. Vance stood, her eyes blazing with determination. "But we will not give them that chance. Humanity has faced existential threats before, and we have always found a way to overcome them. Now we must stand together as never before. We must be ready to fight, and to sacrifice, for the sake of all that we hold dear." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each of her colleagues in turn. "I have never been more proud to be a part of this team. Together, we will face this challenge, and together, we will prevail. For Earth, and for all of humanity." As the meeting adjourned and the members of Project Hyperion dispersed to their respective tasks, a sense of purpose and resolve settled over the facility. They knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But they also knew that they held the fate of their world, and perhaps the universe, in their hands. And so, in secret laboratories and hidden bases across the globe, the work of Project Hyperion continued with renewed urgency. Quantum processors hummed with esoteric calculations, advanced alloys were forged in high-tech foundries, and pilots trained in simulators that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. Earth was preparing for war, a war that would be fought not just for the survival of a single species, but for the right of all life to chart its own destiny among the stars. The galactic empire might have set its sights on Earth, but it would soon learn that humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo across the cosmos, and in the hearts of every man, woman, and child on Earth, a single defiant thought blazed bright. We will not go gentle into that good night. We will rage against the dying of the light. Humanity strikes first. In the cold depths of space, a fleet of Imperial warships hung in formation, their angular hulls bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. At the center of the armada was the massive bulk of the flagship, the Imperator, a vessel that dwarfed its companions like a shark among minnows. On the bridge of the Imperator, Fleet Admiral Zeren stood before a vast holographic display, studying the tactical readouts with a sense of grim anticipation. The Intrepid's report had been met with a mixture of disbelief and predatory excitement by Imperial command. The idea that a primitive species like these humans could pose any kind of threat to the might of the Empire was laughable. But Zeren was not laughing. He had seen too much, fought too many battles, to underestimate any potential foe. And something about the Intrepid's findings had set his instincts on edge. The humans' level of technological advancement, their strange electromagnetic emissions, the hints of hidden capabilities, it all added up to a picture that didn't quite fit the Empire's usual pattern of conquest. "Admiral, we're approaching the target system," reported the ship's navigator, a precise, clipped voice that cut through Zeren's musings. "All ships report ready for transition to real space." Zeren nodded, his eyes never leaving the display. "Initiate jump on my mark. And put the fleet on high alert. I want every sensor at maximum sensitivity, and weapons primed for immediate action." The navigator hesitated, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. It was unusual for the Admiral to order such a heightened state of readiness for what was supposed to be a routine subjugation mission. But he knew better than to question his commander's orders. "Aye, sir. Fleet jump in 3, 2, 1. Mark." With a surge of gravitational distortion, the Imperial fleet tore through the fabric of space-time, crossing the vast gulf between stars in the blink of an eye. But as the ships emerged from their jump, ripping back into the normal universe in a burst of Cherenkov radiation, they found themselves facing a sight that none of them had expected. Arrayed before them, in a vast crescent formation that stretched across the system's ecliptic, was a wall of human ships and orbital platforms, bristling with weapons and shimmering with the telltale flicker of advanced shielding technology. At the center of the formation was a massive space station, its structure a web of interlocking rings and spires that pulsed with the eerie blue glow of quantum entanglement. For a moment, the two fleets hung motionless, sizing each other up like predators across a savanna. Then, with a suddenness that took the Imperials completely by surprise, the human ships opened fire. A storm of directed energy beams and quantum disruptor pulses slammed into the Imperial formation, scattering the ships like leaves in a hurricane. Zeren barely had time to bark out a command before the Imperator shuddered under the impact of multiple hits, its shields flaring with overload. "All ships, return fire," he roared, his voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms and damage reports. "Concentrate on that central station. We must disrupt their command and control." But even as the Imperial ships unleashed their own barrage of weapons, it was clear that they were outmatched. The human ships darted and weaved through the enemy fire with uncanny agility, their movements coordinated with a precision that spoke of long hours of training and an intimate familiarity with the capabilities of their craft. And their weapons, by the Emperor, their weapons, the Imperial shields, designed to withstand the fury of a supernova, crumpled like paper under the onslaught of the humans' quantum disruptors. Ships that had weathered the fires of 100 battles were reduced to drifting hulks in a matter of moments, their crews vaporized before they even had a chance to scream. In the heart of the Imperator's bridge, Zeren clung to his command console as the ship bucked and heaved around him. Smoke filled the air, and the stench of burning circuitry mingled with the coppery tang of blood. Through the haze, he could see the holographic display, a maelstrom of red and amber icons that told the tale of a fleet in disarray. And yet, even as desperation clawed at his heart, the admiral felt a strange sense of exhilaration. This was the kind of fight he had always dreamed of, a true test of skill and courage against a worthy foe. The humans might be primitive by imperial standards, but they had proven themselves to be cunning and resourceful opponents. But the Empire had not conquered 1,000 worlds by laying down in the face of adversity. Zeren gritted his teeth, his mind racing as he sought a way to turn the tide of battle. The humans might have struck first, but the Imperium would strike hardest. "Helm," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Bring us about. We're going to ram that station." The helmsman, his face a mask of blood and soot, stared at the admiral in shock. "Sir." "Do it," Zeren roared. "Full power to engines and forward shields. We'll shatter their command center and scatter their fleet." It was a desperate gamble, a tactic born of equal parts desperation and cold calculation. But it was the only choice left to them. As the Imperator surged forward, its prow ablaze with the fire of its own destruction, Zeren allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The humans had proven themselves to be a formidable enemy, but they would soon learn the true meaning of imperial resolve. The battle was far from over, and in the cold depths of space, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, poised on the knife edge between annihilation and victory. The Empire retaliates. The silence was deafening in the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields stretched out in all directions, littered with the shattered remnants of Imperial and human ships alike. Among the drifting hulks, escape pods and medical shuttles flitted like fireflies, searching for survivors amidst the carnage. But even as the wounds of the conflict were still raw and bleeding, the gears of the Imperial war machine were already turning, preparing for the next phase of the campaign. The Imperium had not risen to dominate an entire galaxy by accepting defeat, no matter how costly or unexpected. In the grand halls of the Imperial Palace on the capital world of Thrakis Prime, the Emperor himself convened a council of his most trusted advisors and military leaders. The news of the disaster at Earth had spread like wildfire, sparking disbelief and outrage in equal measure. The idea that a primitive species could not only resist imperial conquest, but actively inflict such devastating losses was unthinkable. But the Emperor was not interested in excuses or recriminations. His eyes, cold and piercing beneath his ornate crown, swept over the assembled faces of his subordinates, lingering on each in turn. "The humans have proven themselves to be a more formidable foe than we anticipated," he said, his voice a low, menacing growl. "But they are still nothing more than upstart savages, scrabbling in the dirt of their backwater world. They will learn the price of defying the will of the Imperium." He turned to the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber, a swirling matrix of star systems and hyperspace lanes. With a gesture, he zoomed in on the Sol system, the yellow pinprick of Earth's sun glowing at its heart. "We will unleash the full might of our empire upon them," he declared. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon at our disposal. We will drown their world in fire and blood until nothing remains but ashes and obedience." The assembled officers and officials murmured their assent, a rising tide of anger and determination. They had all felt the sting of the defeat at Earth, and they burned to avenge it. But one voice rose above the others, a note of caution amidst the clamor for war. It was Grand Admiral Zeren, the commander of the ill-fated expedition to Earth. He had barely survived the destruction of his flagship, and his once proud bearing was now tempered by a grim, haunted look. "My lord," he said, bowing his head in deference, "I urge caution in this matter. The humans have already proven themselves to be cunning and resourceful adversaries, with technology and tactics that we do not fully understand. If we simply throw more ships and troops at them without a clear strategy, we risk even greater losses." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the chamber was filled with a palpable sense of tension. No one dared to speak out against the Imperial will so directly. But to the surprise of all, the Emperor merely nodded, a flicker of respect passing over his features. "Your point is well taken, Admiral Zoran. We will not underestimate the humans again, but neither will we shrink from what must be done." He turned back to the display, his fingers dancing over the controls. "We will begin with a campaign of targeted strikes, aimed at crippling their military and industrial capabilities. We will sow chaos and confusion among their ranks, turning their own fractious nature against them." The display shifted, highlighting key systems and hyperspace routes. "At the same time, we will gather our strength for a final, decisive blow. A grand armada, the likes of which the galaxy has never seen. We will bring the full weight of the Imperium to bear on Earth, and we will not stop until every last human has either submitted or perished." The council chamber erupted in a chorus of cheers and martial salutes. The die had been cast, and the Imperium had committed itself to a course of total war. But even as the orders went out and the fleets began to gather, a sense of unease hung over the proceedings like a pall. The humans had already proven themselves to be a dangerous and unpredictable foe, and the specter of their strange, quantum-based technologies loomed large in the minds of the Imperial strategists. On Earth, too, the preparations for the next phase of the conflict were already underway. In hidden bases and secret laboratories, the brightest minds of humanity worked feverishly to unravel the secrets of the Imperial technology, seeking any advantage they could find in the coming storm. And in the heart of Project Hyperion, Dr. Eleanor Vance and her team toiled over a new weapon, one that they hoped would be the key to humanity's salvation. It was a gamble, a shot in the dark against an enemy that still held all the cards. But it was a gamble they had to take, for the sake of Earth, and for the future of the human race. The stage was set for a final, cataclysmic confrontation, and in the depths of space, the fate of two species, two ways of life, would be decided once and for all. The Quantum Gambit. In the heart of the Hyperion Command Center, deep beneath the surface of the Earth, an air of tense anticipation hung over the gathered scientists and military leaders. They had all seen the reports, the chilling images of Imperial fleets massing on the borders of human space, the calculations of the terrible toll that a renewed assault would take on their already battered defenses. But they had also seen something else, a glimmer of hope amidst the gathering darkness. Dr. Eleanor Vance and her team had been working around the clock, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and engineering to their very limits. And now, at last, they were ready to unveil the fruit of their labors. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Vance said, her voice ringing out with a clarity and confidence that belied the exhaustion etched into her features. "What we are about to show you may well be the key to our survival and to the future of the human race." With a gesture, she activated the holographic display that dominated the center of the room. It sprang to life, a swirling matrix of esoteric equations and schematic diagrams that danced and shimmered in the air. "This is the quantum disruptor," she said, her eyes shining with a fierce, determined light. "A weapon unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. It harnesses the fundamental principles of quantum entanglement to create a field of disruptive energy that can penetrate even the most advanced Imperial shields and armor." A murmur of excitement and disbelief rippled through the gathered officials. Such a weapon had long been the stuff of theoretical speculation, but the challenges of actually creating one had always seemed insurmountable. "How does it work?" asked Admiral Suri Patel, the grizzled commander of Earth's remaining space forces, "and how can we be sure it will be effective against the Imperials?" Dr. Amir Singh, Hyperion's chief engineer, stepped forward. "The key is in the quantum entanglement," he explained, his hands dancing over the controls of the display. "By creating a pair of particles that are linked at a fundamental level, we can use one to affect the other, regardless of the distance between them." The display shifted, showing a schematic of a sleek, arrow-shaped missile. "We've created a network of these entangled particles, spread out across our fleet and key installations. When the disruptor is activated, it will send a signal through this network, causing a cascading reaction that will disrupt the very fabric of space-time around any Imperial ships or weapons in range. Admiral Patil nodded slowly, her expression grave. "And you're certain it will work?" Dr. Vance met her gaze unflinchingly. "We've run every simulation, every test we can think of. It's not a guarantee, but it's the best chance we have. Without it, the next Imperial attack will almost certainly be the end of us." A heavy silence fell over the room as the magnitude of the choice before them sank in. To commit to using the quantum disruptor was to stake everything on a single desperate gamble. If it failed, there would be no second chances. But in the end, there was no real choice at all. The alternative was annihilation, the end of everything they had fought and bled for. And so, with a solemn nod, Admiral Patel gave the order. The quantum disruptor would be deployed, and the fate of humanity would be decided, one way or another. In the cold depths of space, the Imperial fleet advanced, a vast armada of warships and troop transports that seemed to fill the very heavens. At its head was a new dreadnought, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons and armored in the most advanced Imperial technology. On board the dreadnought's bridge, Grand Admiral Zeren stood watching the displays, his face a mask of grim determination. He had learned hard lessons from the last encounter with the humans, and he was determined not to underestimate them again. But even he was not prepared for what happened next. As the Imperial fleet crossed the boundary into human space, a wave of strange, coruscating energy swept out from the human ships and installations, washing over the Imperial vessels like a tide of shimmering fire. Consoles exploded, shields failed, and weapons systems went haywire as the quantum disruptor tore through the Imperial fleet like a scythe through wheat. In a matter of moments, the proud armada was reduced to a shambles, ships tumbling out of formation and colliding with each other in a chaos of destruction. On the bridge of the dreadnought, Zeren clung to his command chair as the ship bucked and heaved around him, alarms screaming and systems shorting out in showers of sparks. He had never seen anything like this, never even imagined that such a weapon could exist. And as he watched his fleet disintegrate around him, he knew with a sinking certainty that the tide of the war had turned, irrevocably and forever. The humans had played their ultimate card, and the Imperium had no answer for it. In the heart of the Hyperion Command Center, Dr. Vance and her team watched the displays with a mixture of elation and exhausted relief. Against all odds, against the might of an empire that had swallowed 1,000 worlds, they had prevailed. But even as they celebrated, they knew that this was only the beginning. The Imperium was wounded, but it was not defeated, and the technology of the quantum disruptor, now that it had been unleashed, would change the face of galactic warfare forever. The future was uncertain, a vast and uncharted sea filled with both promise and peril. But one thing was clear. Humanity had taken its first, tottering steps onto the galactic stage, and there could be no turning back. The age of the Imperium was over. The age of humanity had begun. Aftermath and consequences. In the aftermath of the quantum gambit, a stunned silence fell across the galaxy. The news of the Imperial defeat at the hands of the upstart humans spread like wildfire, sparking disbelief, shock, and a dawning sense of a universe forever changed. For the Imperium, the blow was catastrophic. Not only had they lost a significant portion of their military might, but the very foundations of their power had been shaken. The invincibility of their technology, the inevitability of their conquests. These were the pillars upon which the Imperial Order had rested. And now, in the space of a single battle, they had been shattered. In the halls of power on Thrakis Prime, recriminations flew and heads rolled as the Emperor raged, and his courtiers scrambled to allocate blame. Grand Admiral Zeren, once a rising star in the Imperial military, found himself cast as the scapegoat for the disaster. He was stripped of his rank and titles, and sent into ignominious exile on a distant, backwater world. But even as the Imperium reeled, the rest of the galaxy was waking up to the new reality. Long subjugated species, chafing under the Imperial yoke, looked to the humans' victory as a beacon of hope. Whispers of rebellion and resistance began to spread, the first sparks of what would become a galaxy-wide conflagration. On Earth, too, the repercussions of the battle were being felt. The sudden revelation of Project Hyperion and the existence of the quantum disruptor sent shockwaves through human society. There were those who hailed the scientists and military leaders as heroes, saviors who had pulled humanity back from the brink of annihilation. But there were also those who viewed the secret project with suspicion and fear, worried about the implications of a weapon that could reshape the very fabric of reality. In the midst of this turmoil, Dr. Eleanor Vance found herself thrust into the spotlight as the face of the new human ascendancy. She was hailed as a visionary, a genius who had unlocked the secrets of the universe and turned them to the defense of her species. But for Dr. Vance herself, the victory was bittersweet. She had always been a scientist first and foremost, driven by a pure love of discovery and understanding. The knowledge that her work had been turned to the cause of war, no matter how necessary, sat uneasily on her shoulders. But there was no time for doubt or second-guessing. The galaxy was in flux, and humanity found itself at the center of a maelstrom of change and upheaval. With the Imperium temporarily crippled, a power vacuum had opened up, and every species with a stake in the galactic order was rushing to fill it. Some sought to make common cause with the humans, seeing them as natural allies against imperial oppression. Others viewed the upstarts with wariness and hostility, fearing that they would simply replace one hegemony with another. And still others saw opportunity in the chaos, a chance to settle old scores and carve out their own empires amidst the ruins of the old order. For the leaders of Earth, it was a dizzying and perilous time. They found themselves thrust into the role of galactic power brokers, navigating a labyrinth of alien politics and ancient grudges. Alliances were forged and broken, deals made and betrayed, as humanity struggled to find its place in a universe that had suddenly become much larger and more complicated. Through it all, the specter of the quantum disruptor loomed large. The knowledge of its existence had irrevocably changed the galactic balance of power, and every faction was scrambling to either replicate the technology or find a way to counter it. Dr. Vance and her team found themselves at the center of a web of espionage and intrigue, as rival powers sought to uncover the secrets of the weapon that had brought the mighty Imperium to its knees. Years passed, and slowly, a new equilibrium began to emerge. The Imperium, though diminished, clung to its remaining territories with a desperate tenacity. The rebel species, united under the banner of human leadership, carved out their own space, a patchwork of free worlds and autonomous regions. And in the interstices, new powers arose, species and factions that had long been overlooked or dismissed, but who now saw their chance to shape the future. As for humanity itself, it found itself changed in ways both profound and subtle. The revelation of their place in the galactic community, the knowledge of the wonders and terrors that lurked beyond their own small corner of the universe, had forever altered their perspective. No longer could they look to the stars with the same sense of isolated insignificance. They were a part of something larger now, for better or for worse. And so, as the galaxy settled into its new shape, as the wounds of war began to heal and the embers of old conflicts cooled, humanity looked to the future with a sense of both trepidation and exhilaration. They had won their first great victory, but they knew that it was only the beginning. The universe was vast and filled with both wonders and dangers, and their journey had only just begun. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it as they had faced the Imperium, with courage, determination, and an unshakable belief in the power of the human spirit. For they were the children of Earth, the inheritors of a legacy that stretched back to the very dawn of time. And they would not go quietly into the night. They would rage against the dying of the light, and in doing so, they would light the way for all the generations yet to come.